Welcome back to another episode of Better Than I Found It, the podcast all things college golf. You're listening to Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor University. Today's guest on Better Than I Found It is longtime Stanford University golf coach Conrad Ray. Conrad, now in his 21st season at Stanford, is a two-time national championship coach. 15 times in those 21 years, his team made the national championship. 6 times they've been in the top 10 at the national championship. They've won 5 Pac-12 titles under his leadership. He's had coached 31 All-Americans, 11 of those first-team All-Americans. He's a 2-time Dave Williams Award winner as the National Coach of the Year. So his record is well documented, and he's one of the best to have ever done it in college golf. He's also talks a lot about his college coach, Wally Goodwin, how he got him to Stanford initially. Talks about Tiger Woods being a teammate there at Stanford. He talks about coaching 7 National Players of the Year. There's just so much in this podcast. He's a great coach, a great guy, and I know you'll enjoy this episode. Okay, everybody, Better Than I Found It fans and faithful, let's welcome one of the truly great collegiate golf coaches, current and all-time, one of my favorite coaches, Stanford head men's golf coach, Conrad Ray. Conrad, we've been talking about doing this for a while. Our schedules just synced up. It's great to have you today.
Well, Coach, it's an honor to be with you. I think the world of you, the friendship you've given me, your record, the fact that you're growing the game still, we're both been at it a while, and I think we're both thinking about that in our careers, like how do you leave it better than you found it, right? So I appreciate you, and it's an honor to be with you today.
Well, it's great, and turnabout is fair play because you had me on your radio show, Golf U. Actually, before we even get going here, tell me the genesis of how that came about. I've been on that a couple of times with you. It's great. You do a super job. It's a quick hit every week, and you guys do a great job. Tell me about how that came about.
I do long for these longer forms, right? I think, breaking it down, we definitely, and that whole model is fascinating, right? Sirius XM is been a great group to work with and work for. They treat it like a radio show. And I always joke that our only real measure of success is that they haven't canceled us after almost 10 years of doing the show. So they claim to not know how many people are listening. So when my mom says, "Oh, I caught the show," at least I know someone's tuning in to that every.
Thank God for your mom.
Yeah, thank God for mom. I mean, the background on that show is fascinating. There's a wonderful guy named Scott Greenstein who's the head of content for Sirius XM, and he has a great line. He says one of his really only jobs is to keep Howard Stern happy. And so he covers the bandwidth for Sirius in terms of content and content creation. And he's an avid golfer, and he loves college golf. And he randomly walked into my office one day after playing a guest round at Stanford. He was doing some business in the Bay Area. And he said, "Hey, would you ever consider doing a radio show? We don't do any college golf coverage." At the time, he was also chatting with our good friend Trey Jones, who's now no longer doing his show. But he said, "Hey, would you think about doing this? And you can do it really kind of anytime you want and pick your co-host." I said, "No, Coach, I'm busy focusing on college golf and coaching." And I said, "Scott, thanks for the ask, but I'll pass this time around." And then he's probably good at like hearing those quick responses. And he called me back a week later. He's like, "Hey, have you thought at all about what I asked you?" He said, I'll make it worth your while." And so that's where it started. It's been fascinating for me to be able, just like you, to kind of connect with friends in coaching and people in the game. And you realize how close knit that network is. And it's always fun too, because it's like my daily shot of like adrenaline, because you get to usually talk to the guy that just won the tournament on Sunday.
Yeah. And
it's really fun to feel that energy with young guys that are just trying to find themselves in the game. And I mean, if you're picking, if college golf is the pre-stock market to the big show, I think and you've had this too. you can really identify, it's pretty clear who's on the rise and who's going to be successful at the next level in most cases. So it's been fun. Golf U's a trip, and I hope you keep coming back on because we need your
Any
insight on the show.
Anytime you want me on there, I will come on there. I enjoy it. I enjoy listening to it. I think between us, we're kind of keeping, hopefully, college golf out in the forefront where people are hearing about it. And you've got a much larger uh, listenership than I do. But I think we both have a loyal listenership, people that tune in all the time to listen to
Yeah.
us. So,
Oh, it's fun.
yeah, well, thank you for that history right there. I'm always interested in a coach's story, like how he got in the game, but I'm really interested when it's a northern guy. I mean, you grew up in a northern cold region. How did you get involved in golf to begin with?
Well, it was pretty random to end up, kind of doing what I've done for quite a while now. But I grew up in a little small town in southern Minnesota called Austin, Minnesota. My dad worked in the meat business. Never really, he went to college for a semester and ended up deciding to go to work full time. My mom was a high school teacher. I have a younger sister, and education was paramount in our house. You had to get good grades before you do anything else. And so, for me, I was always focused on that. And the town I grew up in was pretty cool looking back on it because you kind of had to do everything. You played in the orchestra, you played a bunch of sports. I was a football, hockey, golfer, and it's kind of dictated by the seasons. And so it was a great place to grow up. Austin is home of Hormel Foods. My dad worked in the food business, and so if you didn't work in the plant or around Hormel in some way, you did something that catered to it. You were a barber or you ran a restaurant or something like that, or you were a teacher. And so for me, my dream was to play college football for Lou Holtz at Notre Dame, who was at the top of the top at the time. And you can appreciate this, coach, because as many kids as we say yes to, we have to let a lot of kids down easy too. And I got as far as talking to the defensive line coach at Notre Dame. I was a nose guard. I thought I was pretty good at all state in southern Minnesota, and he got me on the phone, real gracious guy, and he said, Conrad, you got a lot of skills. He said, but you have one problem. I said, what's that, coach? He said, you run in one place too long. And from there forward, I knew my college football experience was maybe going to be somewhat limited at the level I wanted to play. So I wrote some letters randomly out to a bunch of college golf coaches, Coach Holder at the time, a few other coaches, Dick Spivey, I always remember him at Alabama.
Alabama. Mm-hmm.
There was a couple coaches that were gracious enough to at least send me a letter back saying no. Wally Goodwin was at Stanford. He called me up. He said, "Hey, I'd love to chat with you." I was nervous as I can remember, and he said, "Hey, if you can get into Stanford, I've got this guy named Eldrick Woods coming in next year, and I know that you're into school and you're into academics." He said, "You need to take the SAT," which we didn't take in Austin, Minnesota. We took the ACT, so I had to scramble to figure out where to take the SAT. And if you do that and you can get into school, give me a call back. So that's all I kind of really needed to hear. I always, truth be told, I knew only about Stanford because I'd watched the last ESPN football game, and Tommy Vardell, touchdown Tommy, was playing for Denny Green at the time, and he was out. He looked like a stud, and there was palm trees and sunshine, and what I thought to be some pretty girls in California. And so I ended up getting in. Coach offered me that walk-on spot, and we still laugh about it today because my dad was like, my parents were like, why would you move all the way up to California to go to school? It's like a foreign country. You could just go up the street and go to University of Minnesota and see what happens there. And they laugh about it now because they're bigger Stanford fans than I am, maybe, after all these years. But so that's my story. I mean, I could go, there's a lot of layers there, but I ended up just getting a chance that Wally gave me that I probably didn't deserve, and the rest is history. I did walk on the team. I was the only freshman in 1993, 94, and we won the national championship that year. And so I got to see firsthand a bunch of those guys go at it and play so well in Texas and just have this epic year. And friends to this day, guys on the team, we were very close and had a great run over, during my time at Stanford, which I contributed to a little bit. I always joke that I just carried Tiger's luggage a lot, so that was my contribution, so.
Well, I mean, everyone in that team, and they talk about it in that book called The Last Putt, where Neil Neil Hayes and I think Murphy wrote a book
Murphy.
about that 94-95 school year and the playoff at the national championship. But all the players, you guys knew how good Tiger Woods was. It was not a question. He came in and you treated him like a freshman, truly, but you all respected what he could do with the golf. Give me your best Tiger Woods story that's tellable on the podcast.
Yeah, I think well, there's like I kind of categorize. I have plenty that I've probably embellished over the years too. You know how that goes. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. But my best recollection of like one of the funny freshman year stories was Tiger came in, as you said, and everyone knew he was the man. I mean, I think back, you look now at like what a kid can do in college golf if he has one U.S. junior under his belt and the opportunities that exist there. And people forget about that, I think, a little bit. I mean, Tiger arrived at Stanford with 3 U.S. juniors under his wing. And I mean, he's clearly the best player by far over multiple years. And so he turned up and, he shows up with a couple fourth year seniors, or fifth year seniors, better said, that felt pretty good about their own games. Noda, Begay, and Casey Martin, and then we had Brad Lanning, who was a fifth year senior, who's a great guy, and they didn't take much crap from Tiger, and it was always the rule that you would have to take care of the luggage at the airport if you were the freshman, and so. I only know this story because I was driving the van to drop him off to go to the tournament. I wasn't, I wasn't playing.
Totally. Richard Sykes once told me, he said, some kids are in the van and some kids are waving at the van.
I was kind of in between. I was driving the van, but I was waving goodbye as they flew off to the tournament. But it was really funny because Noda gets out of the van and Case gets out of the van and all the luggage is sitting there. And, they said, well, freshmen get the luggage. Tiger just pranced right up to the ticket counter, and we're like, what the heck? So they gave him a hard time. He was grumbling and he said, well, I'm not going to touch the luggage if I go win the tournament. And sure enough, he goes out in his first event, wins at New Mexico, and that was great. He never touched another piece of luggage. The problem with that, I always joke, is that I was the next guy on that list. So I was not only driving the van for Wally, but loading the luggage. So it was okay though, because I needed that. I needed to see how these guys operate, and it's given me just you got to. The bottom line in that story is you got to put your money where your mouth is, and Tiger did that a lot. And we had some great banter, some great competition and competitive stuff. But, he was always the guy that was going to make the big putt on the putting green when you're putting for dollars or win that tournament when you talk smack. He wouldn't just say it, he'd go do it. And that's pretty powerful even today.
Oh, yeah. And then obviously to see what happened over the next 30 years, basically, it's been unprecedented. I'm of a person of my age from my era, I'm in the great minority because I contend that Tiger was so good for about 14 or 15 years that you could wrap up the best attributes and qualities and talent that Ben Hogan had, wrap it up with Jack Nicklaus, put it together, make a hybrid human being golfer, and they wouldn't quite be what Tiger was for those years. And I get some pushback on that because they say, well, that's wrong. Jack Nicklaus won more majors or blah, blah, blah. And I was saying the difference between Jack Nicklaus and Ben Hogan's career and then Jack Nicklaus's and then Tiger's, to me, is the 156th player in the field when Ben Hogan was playing was not a good player at all. The 156th player in Jack Nicklaus's field was probably a club pro, local club pro. And then the 156th player in Tiger's field was world class. And he still did more than either of those. And he won 82 times. So I ramble, but you got to be on the team with arguably, and in my opinion, the greatest player who'll ever live.
Well, that says a lot. And I know how you have a mind for history, Coach. And yeah, I agree. I just think that he just did things that were kind of, we felt like even in college were a little superhuman at times. And it wasn't even the stuff that you see to like win tournaments. It was certain shots or just the way he approached his practice, stuff like that. He just is just a different golfer all the way around, different human in that respect. And yeah, it's cool to say that I got to see all that, no question, front and center. And I actually think too, I will just throw out there, I think it's interesting to think about kind of what the last 30 years, but then what do the next 20 years look like for the guy, and how does he really use all that stuff that he's done on the course? beyond his career. I mean, obviously Jack and Arnie and Gary Player and Tom Watson and some of the greats have really been omnipresent, and it'll be interesting to see how Tiger approaches all of that. I think he's probably thinking about that deeply right now. It's cool to think about where his kids might end up, and just kind of his legacy on top of his playing legacy as well is going to be fascinating.
I think the next chapter for him is to be the great father that that he maybe wouldn't have been earlier before the whole controversy came up and everything. I don't know, but it looks like he's a pretty good father, a pretty good guy that really is loving on Charlie and watching the career go. And he just that'll be interesting to see that dynamic. But also, I want him to stay connected to the game. I do.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I do too. I think we'll all be better off if that's the case, for sure.
Absolutely. Before we leave your college years, though, I want to ask, what about Wally Goodwin made him a great coach? I know he was, and I've heard Mike Holder talk about him a bunch, but they were adversaries. They were competitors. So,
Yeah.
what do you think are his best qualities, and what is the best thing he did for you that made you a great coach?
Yeah, I think Wally had this uncanny knack of like bringing people together, even if he knew that he consciously was doing it or he didn't. Like, he was a true team builder. I think I look back on, let's put it this way. I think about how I try and coach my guys today, and then I always try and sprinkle in a little Wally. Like, I just feel like his graciousness to anyone that he met. He respected if you played the game, he respected you. I said that the other night when I handed out the trophy to Armin and the UCLA Bruins when they came in and won our tournament. We have this massive field, and honestly, the reason why it's this big tournament is because I'm just trying to think about how Wally used to love to welcome in. If you went to Foothill Community College just down the road, or you were at Oklahoma State and you played golf, he wanted to meet you, shake your hand, wish you well, appreciate you, and that was something that I've just thinking back on his legacy, he was really good at. He was, it's funny too, because he really truly was a rancher. There's all these funny memories of him going off winter break. And I remember one year, we had a cold, wet winter on the West Coast, and we all went off for 2 or 3 weeks for Christmas break. And Wally would make some stops or some flights out to his ranch in Wyoming, the Rafter Y, which is this famous, like, iconic place. And his sons were running this active cattle ranch, and he came back one year and walked into the golf office, and the office just smelled so rank. I mean, it literally smelled like pasture. And he was famous for wearing this white Letterman's jacket all around campus. I think the equipment manager flipped him this cool, like, old school, Letterman's jacket. And I'm like, Coach, what in the world does that smell? He's like, hey, sorry, I just got off the plane. I guess he was on his way to catch a flight back home. He knew he had to be back for practice, but in the middle of the night, like, one of their calves was birthing, and so he had to go out and help deliver this breech cow or something, and he didn't get a chance to get home to get his jacket washed, and it just smelled like an absolute barnyard in the golf office. But that was Wally. I mean, he just didn't care, and I think he coupled that with, the way he treated people was very disarming, but he also was, like, uber competitive. Like, when the door was closed and, like, we were all in the midst and trying to win a tournament, and the comments he had, like, it was life or death. Like, you put it all on the line for that guy. And I think that he loved underdogs. I think that's the other thing. You think about that team that I was lucky enough to be part of, but those small little vignette stories of Nota Begay coming from nothing on the reservation. Casey Martin, who really had a disability that was truly. I don't think people really know how debilitating his issue is, and he's kind of been able to succeed through all of that. You've got, like, Will Yanagazawa, who is first generation. His parents don't have anything type of thing. He's got this transfer spot on the Stanford team. So, like, all these guys that made up that successful team when Coach was really at his height, were all underdogs. And I love that. He inspired people, and I think he treated people the right way, and he was very principled, and he loved locking horns with Coach McGraw, with you, with
Coach Holder.
Holder. Yeah, I'm looking at your name and McGraw too. He loved locking horns with the Cowboys coach. You know that as much as anyone. And I think it just for him, it was, like, hey, everyone's kind of, these guys are intimidating. Coach Holder's record is the best ever. I mean, he wins and he does it right, and these guys kick ass every time they tee it up. And I think Wally loved that. He loved to just be the underdog in that a little bit. And then all of a sudden, those underdogs became the top dogs, and that was another fascinating story too. So, really good memories there of just a guy that affected a bunch of people. And his tenure at Stanford, I mean, I was looking at that the other day. I felt like the guy coached there 30 years. He was only there like 11 or 12 years, but he really made his mark. And that's I think, a true testament of a leader.
Absolutely. And everything you just described about him, I didn't get to know him, but I knew of him. And he was just one of the great characters and nice guys, but also a great competitive coach. And he obviously was at a time where the greatest maybe golfer ever played on his team. Pretty amazing. I'd like to know, because you've been at Stanford for 21 years, and you described your recruiting situation, but it's got to be a little bit different than recruiting a kid to a state school. So talk about what you're looking for. What are the attributes you're looking for? Are there any disqualifiers like, no, there's no way? I mean, obviously bad grades would be a no way to get him at Stanford, but what do you look for in a prospect?
Yeah, I think, in our situation, you have to make sure that you are able to and end up being successful with the kid that does have a chance to get in. There's very few, if you start running the filters on golf, academics, test scores, it's weirdly for us kind of a self-selecting process. We start with a big net, but that whittles down to a really fine net quickly, because generally we need to find kids that are taking honors in AP. They're pushing out a 3.8 or a 3.9 GPA. They're testing somewhere in the, around 1,300 on the SAT in two parts. It's, they're leading in their school. They're taking rigor. They're leaning in on the academics as well as their sports. And nowadays that's a little bit of a divergent curve, I think. So the recruiting piece has been challenging. I think we need to keep hustling and trying to find those kids. I always appreciated when Jim Harbaugh was our football coach. He said, if there's a punter in New Hampshire that's a 4.0, I'll go find him. And that's kind of what we do. Our recruiting is a little different than we've spent a lot of time recruiting together and walking the cart path. We do a lot of that, but we vet a lot of candidates in the office or through that process before we go out and recruit. So when we're out watching and evaluating, it's really it's almost, I say, it's kind of checking kids off the list as much as it's checking kids on. And at the end of the day, that cycle hopefully produces one or two really top-notch candidates. I'd love your thoughts, Coach McGraw, on how you fashion your recruiting. But for me, it's always been like, hey, if we can find one blue chip, I call him blue chip kid, one that has the record, the rankings, the wins, and then one kind of project, meaning in a good way, meaning like super athletic, super plugged in, team guy, work ethic guy. Like if I can do that, once a year, find one and one, and then maybe find that one every fourth year, find three. We're going to be at 8 or 9 guys, and I like that mix because you get the dynamic of guys that have been there, done that, but then you get guys that are sponges too, and can really improve quickly while they're there, while they're in our program. So that's kind of been my philosophy in recruiting. I'm a little nervous about where it's all going, right? Like I don't think any coach that I've talked to, even the guys that have a bunch of access to money and opportunity in the NIL game and that type of thing, I don't think any coach really loves where we're at, and we've been all a long time. And so it'll be fascinating over the next 2 or 3 years how things kind of hopefully normalize in some form. But I've been saying that for 2 or 3 years too. Slow down.
Well, you talk about NIL, that's definitely changed it. The transfer portal has changed it, but the roster limits has changed it a little bit too, because you're less likely to take a books kid who's got money, who wants to just have the opportunity. Honestly, a Maverick McNeely, you would have taken him probably because he had turned into a good player, but he was truly a walk-on kid that you gave an opportunity. He was a hockey player. And we're going to talk about him in a minute, but I think there's less of those stories because of that. And you asked what my philosophy was. It's changed from Oklahoma State to Baylor. I've recruited a little bit different kid, but I have several filters. Obviously, one filter is a large group of kids are good enough to help Baylor be a good team. That's a large group. But academics shrink it a little bit like it does it for you. It shrinks it some. And then the third filter is character. And when I miss on that, that's my fault. When a kid comes in here and he does not have a great high character. So I think that filter I've got to go through. But I also think that we have to adjust, adapt, overcome all these different changes. And I'm kind of navigating that right now. It's been a little challenging for me. How about, has been for you, I assume.
Well, I think the other part of that too is like you want to find a kid that's like ready to have success. And I think that, what does that mean, right? And I think a lot of kids nowadays are I never thought I would be the guy that would be like the keep it simple. I actually don't have much for you. Like, let's just have fun and relax. And, it's crazy because usually the college coach should be the one hitting the gas pedal. But I think the college coach nowadays is oftentimes, if you're recruiting a top player, the one hitting the brakes a little bit. And that's different, right? Because I think nowadays the top ranked players, the top ranked juniors oftentimes have so many voices as inputs. I've said a few times, I always feel like on my business card, I should have the title CBO. And everyone's like, well, what's that mean, coach? I'm like, well, that should stand for Chief Bullshit Officer, excuse my French. Hopefully that's, that we can edit that one out. But it's like, there's so many people in the space that have inputs that don't really know or really watch or really see or really appreciate the ramifications of stuff. And I think kids are just wanting to get better, and it's not their fault, but there's just so many voices, whether it's fitness, swing coach, psychologist, parents that are way more involved, head pro at the course, friends. And it's all also too, it's not done in a vacuum anymore. I think you grew up in an era where you only had really what you kind of saw your friends doing, but you didn't have social media. You didn't have this kind of false sense of like what other people were up to. And I think it's hard for kids nowadays to really hone in on quality advice and like who they should listen to and trust. And as a result, they don't trust anyone. And so as a college coach, we're trying to first earn their trust. And then secondly, hopefully give them something that gets them down the road a little farther to success. So it's a dynamic.
50 years ago, a college golf coach had positional respect or power. He was the head coach. And so a kid came to school. He hadn't had a swing coach. He hadn't had a nutritionist. He wasn't part of a sports psychologist, situation. So they come in and they're looking at the college coach. Even when you came through, you still looked to Wally Goodwin for a lot of answers.
Yeah.
And nowadays they've got a ton of other people trying to give them answers. But one thing hasn't changed through all of the NIL, transfer portal, expertise in their life, voices in their head. One thing that hasn't changed, truthfully, coaching still matters, and helping a kid develop into a better adult honestly still matters. How are you able to do that? Because I know your kids are quality human beings that come out of your program.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question because you do it well. I don't know that there's a science to that. To me, it's just like, okay, let's have honest conversation. Let's establish a base level to say, hey, if you really think about it, whoever you are, whatever kid you're sitting with, there's a lot of people like you need to, I almost try and help them identify like who has vested interest. Some kids come in and they're very unaware, right? Like they just kind of listen to everything. They do kind of everything. They try and, kind of accomplish everything. And then they get down this road of being a foot in every bucket. And it's like, okay, guys, let's really hone in on where we're going to be successful and what can move your game from point A to point B. But I think you're right. Like, to me, the base level of that is just like human qualities, right? The please and thank yous, the take your hats off in the clubhouse, the show ups on time, the work hard when you have a chance, all of those things we talk a lot about. I feel like we've talked a ton about it this year, especially. I've got 3 freshmen in the lineup, and it's just, there's not a lot of golf talk going on still, and here we are, like, we're getting ready for the Western and Conference championships. Like, to me, my focus has been on just like those little details of just operating the right way. And I know that if you get those figured out, they're all athletic enough and good enough at golf where it'll start to take hold. And so we focus on those little details a lot. And I think it's, I think I try and create a relationship with every player. I mean, I think nowadays, there's a lot of kids that come at us that have never, I think you and I grew up in an era where you play a bunch of sports, you were on teams, you knew how to operate with a bunch of coaches, coaches in your lives that were running the team. Nowadays, guys, I don't think know that there's a two-way street there. I bet I would almost argue that for you too, Coach, I feel this way, that the kids that I've connected with the most have actually worked as hard on the relationship from their side as I have on their side. Like you mentioned Maverick, like this kid, I mean, I call him a kid. He's not a kid anymore, but I just dearly love Maverick as a friend and a player because he works at our relationship. I mean, it's not always me calling him saying, "Hey, Mav, great job, great tournament." He sends me a note here and there, or he sends, he's thoughtful about stuff. And
Yeah,
it
and
has
that's
to be a two-way street for like maximum success, I feel like.
definitely. And I think Scott and Susan McNeely could do a master class and teach a course on parenting. That their kids are all just so well adjusted. But when Scout was on the team, Scout McNeely, Maverick's youngest brother, a couple of times Maverick came and when he was in the Texas swing, he came and practiced and spent a couple of days with the guys. And I've got 2 thank you notes from him. So it's like he wrote a handwritten thank you note, Maverick did. Thanks for it. It was a great facility. Appreciate all that. I think that's pretty special. And actually, I want to talk about Maverick here in a minute because he's one of my favorite players on tour. And when he was on his way to a victory with Scout on the bag this year, it was just great for our team to be able to. We were actually, interestingly enough, we were watching at a tournament as a team, and we were all very interested in a Stanford grad, that he was going to win because his brother was on the bag. But
that's great.
I'm going to briefly highlight your career. It's very difficult to briefly hit the highlights of all you've been able to succeed. And I realize this has been student athletes.
Skip over that if you want. We can skip
What's
over
that?
I said we can skip over that if you want.
Not going to. A couple things. One, you and Casey Martin are the only 2 national championship coaches who played as teammates on a college team. I'm throwing that out there. I haven't done the complete research, but I think that's a stat. Like Alan Bratton, you're one of the few guys who have played on a national championship team and coached one. You're the only coach to have won national championships in both the stroke play era and now the match play era. I don't think it'll ever happen again. You're one of only 3 current head coaches to have won 2 titles. Do you know the other 2?
Yeah, Jay Sewell and the very great John Fields, right? Or Chris Hack, sorry. I was thinking of John Fields, but he's come close. So Chris Hack, yeah.
Yeah. And John Fields has won 2, right?
John Fields is one.
Yeah,
John
2012, and yeah, so that's one of only 4.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Maybe that's why I had it when we talked about it earlier. I was thinking, hey, who are they? Yeah. So
all right, I think you've had 15 NCAA championship appearances, 6 top 10 finishes, 2 NCAA championships, 5 Pac-12 titles, 31 All-Americans, 11 of those first-team All-Americans, 5 Pac-12 Players of the Year. You've won the Dave Williams National Coach of the Year award twice. You've had just a great career in 21 years, and it's been fun to watch, fun to be around for basically all of that. But if you think about it, that you probably still have some thoughts like, I could have done more. I think we all are that way. That's just what competitors are. I'm going to ask this. I hate to ask this question, but I'm going to. One coaching mulligan. If you had one, what would it be?
One coaching mulligan. Gosh, let's see. That's a good one. You caught me off guard on that. But I do think that, to me, generally, I think that I've realized later in my career that, especially early, I was so black and white. Like I felt like if you didn't do it my way or didn't do it how I thought it should go, then you were not going to get it done. And I think I did alienate or put probably better said, like too much pressure on early teams. I don't know if you felt the same way, but I don't think I've really softened, but I just managed the expectations in a different way over the course of my tenure. Um, and I think because of that, we had some moments in big moments where we didn't perform. I think about kind of missing, we missed an NC2A one year when we were playing at Ohio State in regionals with Patrick Rogers and Cameron Wilson. And God, I was just breathing fire that year. I felt like we were so good and I was putting a lot of heat on the guys and I had high expectations and it was a big buildup. And, we go play the regional. That's probably the worst feeling as a coach. And I know you've probably been there, not much, coach,
Been
but
there, been there.
it's just that you have a good team and then regionals doesn't go very well, or you've had a good year and regional, you just don't get to where you want to go. Those are probably my biggest memory of mulligans. I mean, we had one. I think a lot about like what just happened last year for our program. I mean, we had three world-class players. We were kind of struggling to fill the fourth and fifth spot, but with Mikkel Bjerch-Andresen leading the way, we were kind of on a little bit of a run. Carl Phillips was playing well, and we get to NC2As and just kind of laid an egg, frankly, And so that's golf, I guess, but I also look back on those scenarios and try and file away a few things that I probably would have said differently in the moment, or I think there's kind of natural reactions. To me, the best moments I've had in those situations are like where you take the counter reaction to how you probably should feel and what you should say. I mean, I think it's surprising for guys when we have a tough round and they're feeling really down in the dumps and I have something, that's totally different to say than they expect I'm going to say. I don't know. It's like having fun. It's sometimes you just have to take it and turn the narrative a little bit. I think Wally used to say this a lot, actually, that a good coaching is like the pressure release valve on a tank, and like you're in charge of that. Like you either need to turn it up or turn it down, and like realizing what's needed in the moment is like a really fine art. And I've gotten it wrong as much as I've gotten it right, but when you get it right, it's pretty cool because you can see the team respond. And so that's a long-winded answer to the question of what's your biggest mulligan, but I think you do it long enough, there's plenty of mulligans, for sure.
Yeah, and I contend if you learn from the mulligan, then it's okay. It was valuable. When you're in
Yeah.
a scramble, you pay money for mulligans to make your team score lower, and that's what you're doing. The experience pays off eventually if you learn from it. So
Yeah, 100%.
I agree with that completely. Let's talk about some of the players. I briefly hit the highlights of your career, but you've had, I think, you've had 11 first-team All-Americans. Siwon Kim back in the fairly early years. Andrew Yoon, wonderful player. He shot 70, 70, 70 at Carson Creek in some tough conditions at the Ping Invitational one year. I just didn't think that was possible, 600 that year. Patrick Rogers, Cameron Wilson won the NCAA championship. Maverick McNeely, we've talked about. Mikkel Bjerch-Andresen and Carl Phillips, all great players. So you've had a ton of great players. I'm going to contend, and I'm going to give some history here, but I'm going to make a bold take here. Tiger Woods won 11 events in 2 years at Stanford. Patrick Rogers won 11 events in 3 years, and Maverick McNeely won 11 events in 4 years. So those are the three guys that have the career victory list all tied. But two of those guys, Patrick, his third year, and Maverick's freshman year overlapped. And I'm going to say it's the greatest overlapping in the history of college golf. Here's why. If Patrick had stayed another year, we have no idea what it had done. But Patrick and Maverick played on the team Maverick's freshman year. They both won 11 events. They won 6. I think they won 7 National Players of the Year awards. Now think about that. Two guys from 2014 through 2017 won a total of 7 National Player of the Year awards. Jack Nicklaus Award, Maverick won twice, Patrick won once. Fred Haskins Award, they both won once, and Patrick won the Ben Hogan Award. And Maverick won the Byron Nelson Award in 2017, which to me, he's the only Byron Nelson Award winner to also be the College Player of the Year ever. I got to tell you, That's very impressive for two guys to overlap their career and have all of that success. They were both three-time first-team All-Americans. How could you have those two guys on the same team?
Well, sometimes you get good luck. I mean, I just feel like there's no science to that. I just feel like, and you're nice to talk about some of the wins I've been through or great players I've had, but it's really about the play. Those guys have done it. It's about them being good guys, doing it the right way. I love hearing Maverick to this day talk about how influential Patrick was on his career and how he just came in as like this walk-on, like you said, and he literally would shadow. He was like Patrick Rogers' little puppy dog. He'd watch Patrick practice and he'd watch Patrick, kind of think about his game. He'd watch Patrick journal, like one of the things that I still to this day, I encourage my guys all the time, but very few have the discipline to be able to do that. But very few take the time to journal about their games. And that was like Patrick's, it was like his superpower in some respects. He'd walk into my office. I mean, very few times did I ever have a player like set a meeting with me to come talk about his game and then download his notes and talk about all of the different things that he had seen. And he had a notebook for every season in college golf that he played, and it was pretty amazing. And Maverick started doing that, and that just discipline to the process was something that I think was infectious with those two. And they influenced each other. But I also think like you think about kind of where that influence also permeated the other guys on the team too. You had guys that were watching all the time. And, I think their influence is just immeasurable when it comes to our program and the success we've had.
I totally agree with that. And a couple of things. One, that's what got me connected to Maverick. Initially, I walked when I was at Alabama for that 1 year as an assistant coach. I was walking with Trey Mullinex. We were paired with you all, and he played the first 36 holes with Maverick. And Maverick and I were just talking, walking down the fairways, and that's when I discovered he was a journaler, which I have been journaling my entire career. And so and then I did want to mention this earlier. I have recruited against you one time for a major player. That was one, and that was Patrick Rogers. Yeah. I got him to visit Stillwater, but I couldn't get him over the hump. So doggone it.
Yeah. No, that was a win for us. I know that was all of us were on the trail hard for Patrick Rogers. I think they played the game right too. I mean, he had 10 or 12 really good schools that were super interested. And to this day, Bruce Hepler, who's a dear friend of both of ours, I mean, I still think about that, it's kind of coming down to the wire and Patrick's playing the Blessings. And if you've ever been to the Blessings, there's this big, there's this big fishbowl of a clubhouse, and Bruce and I are kind of behind the green. And I think at that stage of the game, Patrick had shared that he was coming to Stanford or he had committed, and all my other coaching friends were laughing because they're watching, and Hepler and I were, and all of us were locking horns on Patrick. And there was a moment where Bruce was he had his index finger out and he was pumping me in the chest saying, I will never lose another recruit to you ever again. And I mean, we were just so into it, but I feel fortunate and lucky that he picked our place. No doubt. It could have gone a bunch of different ways.
Oh, well, it was that was quite a recruiting whirlwind, as I recall, but I was glad to be a part of it. Patrick, I've followed his career all the way through. I still am shocked that he hasn't won on the PGA Tour, but I know he's going to. He's that talented, and makes a ton of cuts, and he's in contention quite a bit. I think there's no doubt. But when I walked with Maverick that week at Prairie Dunes, when I was at Alabama, he asked you for my number. He just wanted to say, thanks, Coach McGraw. I really appreciated the conversation. You gave him my number. When he texted me, I texted you and I said, you know what? I think I know what makes him pretty impressive. And I think I know what makes him look good. I asked you a question. What's the most special thing about Maverick? Do you remember what you told me?
Well, we talked about this pre-show. You tell me what I told you. I'd love to hear.
Well, you told me this. You said Maverick wants to make it in the world of golf. And at the time, he wasn't positive he wanted to be. And I want you to tell that story about, say, amateur or whatever. But he didn't want his dad's money to open doors for him. He wanted his golf skill and the merit of what he did as a person to open those doors. And I said, wow, that is impressive because, obviously he had an advantage because financially the family was in good shape. some people would call that maybe not an advantage, but he didn't want the money to open a door. He wanted his golf merit. I was impressed by that. What do you think?
No, I think you're exactly right. I look back on that whole Mavericks rise through the ranks, his improvement, him managing this kind of situation that, his dad had a bunch of success in Silicon Valley, was a very kind of out there presence in terms of technology and being the founder of Sun Microsystem. And it was fascinating to see Mav kind of take that on, not as like something he was trying to defend, but something that actually was a motivation. And he talked candidly, he still does, talks candidly about kind of leaning in on that and forging his own path. And I do think that's weirdly why golf has become his life. I mean, it's the one thing that he could do that everyone could say, hey, your dad can't actually hit the shots for you, and I think even you referenced that story. I mean, and to your earlier comment, I mean, Scott and Susan McNeely should write a book, because the way that all of their boys have kind of come through and type of people they are, it's incredible. But I do know this about Scott. He was the master with reverse psychology. So he could say something to Mav, and Mav would, he didn't know that his dad was playing that card on him a little bit. Like even when Mav turned pro, Scott kind of was making statements to the media about certain things that I think he didn't really care about. Like he cared, but he was saying it almost to communicate with his son indirectly, that Mav could latch on and use his motivation. Even here we are today in this world of name, image, and likeness, and basically professional amateurs, right? The top players being paid for their name, image, and likeness. And there was a stretch there where Mav was really not even sure he wanted to play professional golf. He graduated at Stanford with a degree in mechanical science and engineering. He's super bright. He could have gone off into the world of business or technology and just crushed it. But and Scott was challenging him on that a lot. And there was also a spot where, hey, you don't really need the money, Maverick, necessarily to go play professional golf, but how could you be a professional and still benefit people around you? And they actually, and I sat in on the meeting. They lobbied the USGA at the time to say, hey, would you allow Maverick to play as a professional and donate all of his money to charity? And so this idea of professional amateurism was like a step ahead. And nowadays you laugh about that because you don't necessarily need to donate it to charity, but definitely guys making money, right, that are playing amateur golf. So I thought that was a fascinating concept that ultimately the USGA didn't adopt. I guess I get it. They really are working hard to protect the amateur game. And at the time, it just wasn't, the cards weren't right to approve that. But Maverick and Scott and the McNeelys have been ahead of the curve their whole time, and it's so fun to see the progression. Really, I mean, we all like to think that kids are on the upward trend when they're coming into our programs, and that curve goes up with a few dips here and there, but Maverick's curve was almost vertical in terms of his. He was a walk-on, and in probably 18 months he was, or something like that. I don't have the exact timing, but he was number one in the world in the shortest period of time you would imagine, with some college wins and some amateur summer golf.
I mentioned he and Patrick being the greatest overlap of two players and in their record. I don't think I've found that. I mean, maybe Curtis Strange and Jay Haas, but they didn't have as many National Players of the Year award at the time, that type of thing. But I will say this. I don't think it'll ever happen again. Maverick won the Nicholas Award twice, Haskins Award, and the Byron Nelson Award. I don't think a walk-on will ever do that again in the history of collegiate athletics, period, on any sport, to be the best player in the game when you were a walk-on. And some people would say, well, he wasn't really a walk-on, was he? But tell my audience, he was a guy that played hockey in high school that you said, yeah, come on over, we'll give you a spot on the team.
No, his backstory, fascinating, right? Like he grew up just up the road. So when I said luck is involved, I mean, he just happened to be close to us. He was a junior member at the Stanford golf course. His dad had gone to Stanford, mom had gone to Stanford. So dad had gone to Harvard, was at the Stanford Business School. I just had seen this kid come to camps. I, knew about him. I'd teach him a lesson or two when he was a little pup, stuff like that. And we're late in the cycle. I have one spot on the roster. I'd already gotten commitments from Jim Liu, who was number one in the country, and a kid named Bharat Badwar at the time. He's not a kid
Hmm.
anymore. The B man.
Love him. Love that guy.
Yeah, Bharat came in from Australia and was arguably one of the top Australian players at the time. And then you have this little guy up the street called Maverick, and they showed up on the farm and we went at it. And I always say this to kids when I talk to them about the recruiting process, how you never really know when you'll figure it out. Within a year, it's a true story. You've got Maverick as world number one or close to it, one of the top players in the country. And then you've got Jim Liu, who, sadly kind of fell out of the game. Like he started having some swing issues. He couldn't quite hit it, and he decided to step away from high level competitive golf after almost winning two U.S. juniors, but for sure one by the end of his freshman year. So it can flip quickly, and you fall in and out of love with the game and your ability to play, but you just never know. And you take a kid that has some athleticism and has all the right stuff, like Maverick, as we obviously have talked about, has. He took the bait. He definitely got it done. And cool story though to see him come into that team with two world-class players and then establish himself as the top dog right away.
Well, and I've said this on several occasions, and I'll say it right now. Episode 24 of Better Than I Found It was Maverick, and I didn't expect it to be what it was, but he basically gave junior golfers and freshmen in college a master class. This is how you handle your freshman year. This is how you develop. This is how you observe. This is how you pay attention. This is how you listen to become much, much better than you are. And he had Cameron Wilson and Patrick Rogers as upperclassmen that literally taught him more than you could imagine. Episode 24, got to listen to it. It's a must listen.
Sorry for the dogs barking there, Coach. Someone
That's okay.
Doorbell. So
makes it real. Makes it real. But you agree? I mean, I don't know if you've listened to that episode, but it might be interesting for you to do so. You lived it, so you saw it play out on a daily basis. Maverick McNeely, to me, is one of the most impressive guys on tour, and I think he'll win a lot more golf tournaments.
Yeah. No, I think he's on his way. I think that was a huge confidence boost for him because you can work that process and be dedicated to that and have the discipline to do that. But if you don't have the spoils once in a while, it's hard to keep that going. And so I think to see him win with Scout on the bag was a really, really special moment. And I'm with you. I think he's just gonna keep on trucking. And now he's and you've seen this with other players, right? Just the levels that exist on the PGA Tour. Like everyone thinks there's kind of just you make the tour, you make a living at it. Hey, congratulations. But I think there's about 6 levels on the PGA Tour, right? There's the guys that are just out there trying to find their way. There's the first-time winners, and then there's the multiple-time winners. And then you've got guys that are trying to chase the Rorys of the world, right? So it's like a pecking order, and I think Mav is working through that right now, and it'll be fun. Just like all of our guys, I mean, you mentioned Patrick Rogers. Here we have Joseph Bramlett, another guy that's out there, and he was on the very first team that I coached at Stanford, the biggest recruit that I could imagine signing. And he's still playing at a high level and has battled a bunch of injuries. So, I mean, every guy has their own story, and it's really fun to see them work through that for sure.
Every path, every journey has its own story. So speaking of that, yours has included 2 national championships, one at stroke play in 2007 at Williamsburg and 2019 at the Blessings at match play. Do you have any memories that just stand out from either of those? But if I'm doing my history correct, your 2007 team had 4 All-Americans, Joseph, Rob Gruby, Zach Miller, and Matt Savage. And by the way, I loved Matt Savage. What one of the all-time greats that nobody ever talks about, but he was a 3rd-team All-American. Your 2019, how many All-Americans were on that team?
Well, we had Brandon Wu and Isaiah Salindo were kind of our huge guys there. That was a fascinating team, right? Because you had guys like Dalet Tulabayev, who was a freshman who stole center stage with a couple huge putts on national TV. That was just a team that was inspired. You had a guy like Henry Shimp, who I've said was like the ultimate glue guy. I mean, this guy.
I've been on his podcast, by the way. I've been on his podcast.
Yeah, the tie. I mean, he's awesome. I mean, and we joked about it. Shimp had 6 years at Stanford because he had a COVID year and a medical year. And I said, can I get six more? Because his legacy on our program, it was just a joy to coach the guy. He came to work hard every day. But yeah, I mean, a few standout moments there. I do, gosh, I remember like walking the last round at the Golden Horseshoe. We were paired with the final pairing back when it was stroke play. We had Georgia on our right, but then we had Coastal Carolina on our left. And I remember watching Rob Gruby in the final round, like take Dustin Johnson to the mat. I mean, it was so fun because he had this DJ was just smashing it. Rob Gruby was this little, he's kind of a throwback in some respects because he just was a striker. He was a flusher, but it didn't go very far. I had a team there in '07 that between our bombers then were Bramlett and Miller, but we had Gruby and then we had Smalls, who was just a flyweight, but the biggest heart you've ever met. And he was always the guy that I would try and get in a pairing with the biggest name player, because he just wanted to scrap with you. But for some reason, I remember walking up the 18th at the Golden Horseshoe, and you've got Groovy and DJ, and I think maybe, don't quote me on this, but it was one of the great Georgia players. It might have been Brian Harmon, actually, in the final pairing. And it's just like, wow, is this really going to happen? Like, we're going to take out Georgia, who, as we both know, Chris Hack is a legend in the game and has had amazing teams over the years and amazing players. Are we going to really get this done? And
You won by 12. You won by 12. Come on. You weren't that nervous on the last
Well,
one.
I wasn't, we had played great that final round, and I was like, I just had this moment where I'm like, holy crap, this is actually happening. You don't really think about what's happening until it's actually happening,
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
but I do have that moment. I remember in 19, the blessings. I mean, the story there was the course, right? It was so hard. And I just have these like one memory I take away. It's fun to see. I know you're close with him, but to see Victor Hovland win again. Victor Hovland went around with, he was doing the pause at the top of his backswing with the driver. I think I walked with him and his group the final round, and those greens at the blessings were no joke. It was like putting on a pool table. And I kid you not, Victor did not have a second putt the entire day that was more than 2 feet. I mean, it was the most impressive putting display I've ever seen in my life. And he was so dialed on the greens. And everyone talks about Victor's hitting, but like the way he played that day, it just left like, holy mackerel, this kid's a special talent. But the funny part about that was the momentum of match play at the NC2A, we were pumped that we were in the finals. We end up, and sometimes it's like who you have to play and who you don't have to play. We avoided the Oklahoma State pairing, and we were thankful for that. But we got Texas in the final match, and they were predicting huge thunderstorms, which ultimately did show up. But we teed off for, I think the first tee time in the final match on the final day of match play was like 6 a.m. back in Arkansas, because they were predicting thunderstorms, and that one was wild because we end up winning. It's hot and humid and the storm's rolling in, and I get a call we were lucky enough, one of our benefactors gave us a ride back to campus, and the pilot calls, and this guy's like an ex-military guy. He's like, Coach, he's like, if you're not at the airport by 0400 hours, we're not out of here. We're staying another night. So we win the trophy. They hand the thing. I mean, I barely shook hands with a few people. We threw everything in the minivans, and we're off to make the private airstrip on the back roads in Arkansas. And we show up at the airport, and it is rain. I've never seen rain like this. And this guy just took us up through this little hole in the clouds. And, I just remember like literally landing in San Jose and the telecast coming on, because they showed it kind of on tape delay. And it was this really surreal moment of, I felt like we definitely stole something from Texas. John wasn't happy. He had a great team, those really good players. Cole Hammer was part of that. And,
the Cootie twins.
Yeah, and the Cootie twins, we had no business probably snagging that one, but we got it done when it mattered, and that was really
You guys did win conference, regionals, and nationals, so it was not a fluke. You guys had a very, very good team.
We had a good team, and those guys were on a roll. You see that now too a little bit with for the people that are watching closely, like Isaiah Salinda has this kind of magnetism to him. I mean, he's he's starting to make some news on tour. He had a close call down in Mexico a couple weeks ago. This guy is one of those guys, and you put him in a group like that can kind of he can convince himself of stuff, and that's powerful. You've coached probably guys like that that are just infectious, and Isaiah was that guy for us, along with, Brandon Wu is a world-class player. He kind of soft-spoken guy, but between those two and then some good play by David Schneider and Daulette and Shimp, we were on a roll that year. So it was really fun to kind of see it all the way through to the end.
That's great. Well, Conrad, this has been amazing stories. I expected this out of you. You're a professional as a coach, but you're also a professional storyteller, and you did a great job. You gave me some history I didn't know, which is great. I know my listeners are going to love every bit of this. So before I let you go, where's your conference championship and when is it?
Yeah, we're a couple weeks away from Old Stone in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So, now part of the ACC conference. We're calling it the All Coast Conference. We got it covered out west for everyone that's playing at home. But it sounds like Old Stone's a whale of a course, top course in Kentucky. We're looking forward to getting back there. It's been really fun, even in a short bit, to be part of the ACC. They take their golf seriously. Those coaches are all stand-up guys, and there's a lot of good golf to be played. So we're looking forward to seeing if we can make a run at that trophy and then on to what we're hopeful of. We got some work to do yet here at the end of the year. We got to stay above 500.
Yep.
We've got the Western next week at Pasatiempo, newly redone Pasatiempo, which has been really cool to see Jim Urbina's work there. And then hopefully we'll get to see a coach at La Costa here, not too long, just a month away or so.
That would be great. Well, listen, Conrad, it's been great having you on today. Thank you for the wisdom. Thank you for the stories, and best of luck the rest of the way.
Well, thanks for having me, Coach. Really fun to be with you. And again, just honored to share a few memories with you.
It was great. Thanks again.
Cheers.